Hey, it's Larry. Welcome to Stewarding the Wealth Transfer. Well, today I'm going to admit that I didn't get it right. August was not the worst in American history. It was actually a good one. It wasn't a bad one. So I didn't get that right. I want to talk about a future event that I have planned for January of 2026. I want to talk about what I've learned from going to 2 prophetic gatherings, and I'm just going to put pictures of my trip over parts of this video. Sometime I might hold events out here, and then you might inspire you to think, man, I'd love to get out to Washington and see the ocean in Washington, see the Puget Sound. And I want to talk to you a little bit about destiny. So in my August update, I made a big deal about how I thought that this would be the August, it would maybe be the worst August in American history. I assumed the worst August it would be during the time of Pandemonium. That was a false assumption. Maybe now it's next year. I just want it to be done. I do believe that we're well into the Pandemonium. I think we're going to see unrest and arrest, and it's going to lead to an outpouring. I think the focus of this channel is to discuss what Kim Clement said and try to figure out the prophecies, but I was talking to Charlie Jordan, and he said even Kim Clement didn't know how some of his prophecies, what they meant, and they talked and discussed about how to interpret it. So my goal is to help you go down the right path and then use the wisdom, godly wisdom, entrepreneurial wisdom, to walk out the wealth transfer in a way that you won't regret. So that's really what I'm going to focus on. And I love the prophetic. I want to walk more in it, but that's not the primary focus that I am qualified to bring. So I'm going to just tell you what I see Kim saying. And I do see these 3 months as times of pandemonium and arrests, and I think they will fall in the fall. I think that we are there. And the wealth transfer is going to come when the current economic system begins to fall. And when the Dow hits 20,000, the dinar will come, and that's what I think will probably be the first big one. But XRP, silver, they're all lining up for explosive gains, and I just love this journey. You may be in a very difficult time. It may be rugged and burned out like this hill, because there's a history of forest fires in this area a number of years ago. But God's got big things for you. I want to encourage you to dream. I want you to realize you're called to live out the destiny that He's given you, and I hope that you'll follow along, and let's do it together. What I'm learning about destiny is, I've said it repeatedly on this channel. God is going to bless you with increased affluence so that you can have increased influence. And those are the things I want to talk about today. When I went to Canada, I learned a lot because it was the first couple of events I've been to after having done 2 events. And I'm going to tell you what I loved about it and what I think could have been better about it. What they did really well is they had a chef that they hired, and you bought a food plan, and it was US about $15 a meal. So they were trying to do a really good job, and I would say they did. It was really great to get to talk to people in the meetings. But one of the things that I think that is really good about Bootcamp, and it's a very rare social situation that I think should be more intentional in Christianity, is that at Bootcamp, we had questions where we directed the table, set people in small enough groups where they are directed to get to know each other. And I think that's a super important thing. And it's not common that you get to know people. At my own church, I've gone there for years, over a decade, and I do know people, but the new people I don't know, because there's not a way that we would sit down and have, intense conversation. I tend to initiate intense conversation, and some people like that and some people don't. I'm going to tell you, I was late to be married. I was in my early 30s, and some people go, well, that's not late. I experienced a number of years as a single person, not yet married, and I liked to be social. I wanted to know people. I wanted to hang out with some of the couples who were maybe older than me so I could learn from them. And I like to hear how I might be a better husband and, watch how they're raising their kids or whatever. I think it's really important that singles are integrated. So one of the things that just shocks me, because I've been married for 32 years, is how the church has totally dropped singles ministry. I am very empathetic towards people who wish they were doing life with somebody and they're not. And it's a frustrating situation. And as I go forward in the events and the training and teaching that I'm going to do, I want single people to be well incorporated, well benefited, and well represented in what we've got to say, because I know that men and women can make bad decisions by themselves and with others, but it's not inherently wrong for the body of Christ to reach out to people who are hurting, and we should do life together. We should do it in a godly fashion, and we should encourage everyone who needs help and bring encouragement and love and support. And that's what I want to do, single and married. One of the things that's happened to me in going and being intentional with relationships, and it's really due to the boot camps that I've initiated, it attracts a really high caliber person, and then I end up getting to know some of these people. So I've had an influx of more high quality people in my life in 2025 than I can. It's kind of like going to college. I mean, when I first went to Bible college, I had a ton of influx of new godly people, and I think that you guys should be experiencing what I've been experiencing. And in order to do that, you can't stay where you are and then go to meet these people that God is calling from all over to, fulfill their destiny. And they're going and they're meeting new people, and they've got big dreams and big ideas. And I believe that God's going to bring them big resources. And I think we need to get together like that. So it was a sacrifice to go to Canada twice. I have a camper that goes on my truck, and it's a 9-hour drive. It's not small. And so I take a week to do these 4-day events. I basically take 2 days to get there and then 1 day to get back. And I go and meet a mentor on the way in the Seattle area. And so that's pretty cool that my wife didn't go because she's running the pregnancy center, and she's, spends a couple days a week as a grandma as well. So I really enjoyed the event, getting there, touching base with people on the way back, talking to people on the phone, having a lot of time to reach out. And then I met a number of amazing new people. And I think it's something that you should do as well. And I'm beginning, as I study destiny, it's a topic you're going to hear me talking more and more about. I have talked about it. But I believe when God imparts destiny to you, He's inviting you usually to take a journey. And you're going to go and you need to meet new people. And sometimes you even need to go to a new place. So I left my truck in Anacortes and walked onto the ferry for $16. And I went on a journey on my way to Kelowna. And as I've been studying the Bible, I saw that Mary was faced with her destiny, and she was encouraged to go on a journey. If you think back to Abraham, he was called by God to leave the land that he knew and the culture that he knew. He was called to go on a journey to carry out the will of God. And I just think that's the way that God so often brings destiny to us. We assume it's going to come with perfect clarity, but it comes with mystery. When God brings you destiny, I see Him bringing mystery, and He invites you to come along with Him and listen and learn what He has to say. So my wife and I are thinking about maybe if we're to make the difference in our family that we would like to, we might need to be closer than a half hour. We're right now 2 hours plus away from our closest grandkid. And so we're thinking about maybe we will transition next year closer to our grandchildren, because we're going to have 2 in Washington, and then we've already got 2 in Alabama. And we do go back there, and last month we did spend a few days with my son and his family in Alabama. What is God talking to you about in your destiny? And is the way that you've lived going to cut it, what you've done going to cut it for going forward? I don't know. I think it's a time of change. It's a time of learning new things. And so what I loved about this time in Kelowna is I love the intentional time of developing new relationships, and I love the high caliber people that I got to meet and talk with. And I think you should meet, people like that. I loved how they did the conference where the speakers even often ate with the participants. And so that's how I got to meet Barry. That's how I got to meet Nathan. And I want to do stuff where we get to bring people in as we grow. First of all, I don't want to do another event before the wealth transfer happens, because I don't want to charge a whole bunch more, but I want to do it really well when everybody's got a lot of money. And really what I want to do, and what I feel like I'm called to do, is to help you guys steward millions and tens of millions and even hundreds of millions of dollars for the kingdom of God. And it's something that I just feel like that's part of my destiny. And so I want to do it. I want to talk about it. I ended up putting money down on a house for the second week of January. It's in Florida, so I know the weather's going to be good. I mean, it could rain. It's not necessarily going to be hot. It probably won't get above 72. It'll probably be 62 to 72. It's in northern Florida, but at least you can drive safely. You can fly in. It's outside of hurricane season, so, and it's a huge house. It's like a 10-bedroom house, and I want a lot of single people to go. It's harder to house singles, but in this huge house, there's a number of bunk beds, and I think it'll be really good. What was interesting, and this could sound odd, but in Kelowna, I ended up having a conversation with two other guys, and then two other ladies came into the conversation, and it was a very appropriate conversation, but we were talking about marriage and how to do it well and how to not screw it up. And one of the things that I remember I said is, my wife and I have this rule, is if we want to play the card that we're going to marriage counseling, that's a card that we each have. And if we play it, we have to be willing to go ourselves, but our mate has to go. And my wife has initiated it once appropriately, and I've initiated it once appropriately. And so I've done a fair bit of marriage counseling, and it was really good. I used to be of the persuasion, like, oh, if you got Jesus, then you don't need a marriage counselor. Well, now, after having the benefit of a marriage counselor, I think if you think that way, what about when your car breaks? Do you not need a mechanic? What about, do you never need a carpenter? Do you know everything because Jesus taught you how to pour concrete or how to install software? Do you not need advice how to buy crypto? Or if you know how to buy it, do you need advice which crypto? Or if you get into real estate, do you need advice of how to do the acquisition and what allocation you should have and percentage and what money down, what's a good interest rate? Do you know all that stuff intuitively, or does God just tell you? And I think in the same way that we need help with all those things, we can need a marriage counselor, and when you need it, and you need to do it. But what was interesting is we ended up having this conversation, and one lady was divorced. The other lady had been separated, and then one of the guys was divorced, and the other guy married late like I did. But we were in this common room, and we were talking, and when I said that, the lady who was divorced said, man, if I would have had this advice, I wouldn't have got divorced. If we would have thought the way that you guys are describing that you work at your marriage, we wouldn't have got divorced. And so I thought it was really good to have appropriate conversations with people from a variety of backgrounds. And so when we do the groups that lead to intimacy at the Billionaire Bootcamp, I do separate the men from the women. But I do think it's good to have appropriate, I don't think one-on-one, I'm not going to sit down with some lady, and I would encourage you to not do this, the same. If you're both single, I think that could be fine. But, you don't look inappropriate, and you don't do things that lead to inappropriate. It's going to be obviously a dry place. We're not going to have alcohol. I'm just saying that because people do things, and then there's a lot of casualties in the rearview mirror when people, do dumb things with other dumb things. And so, but I think we need to learn how to offer high quality relationships to people, and we need to be appropriate. If you're in a group and it's a big group, I don't think it's bad to have friends. But it's not like you talk to single people. If you're married, you can't have these ongoing deep relationships at all with other people who are married. So those are questions that it's good to be cautious about. So here I'm walking through Winthrop, Washington, about 2/3 of the way to Kelowna, and I want to talk about how my wife and I navigate this. And you may have a different opinion, and I'm happy for you to share it, because I think we should have a debate. I talk with Lauren Atkinson monthly. I talk with Mary Crowley monthly. She's single. Lauren's married. Lauren and her husband and her family have been to my house. And so what my wife and I do is that I put it on the schedule if I'm going to call these people, just like I do everybody else. My phone is always available. My wife occasionally unlocks it and looks at what I do. But I just think that we have to have transparency. I can unlock her phone and look at any calls that she has. But I think that single people need to be incorporated into the church, and married people need to have a high level of integrity and accountability. And I know that if I was ever having another woman, married or single, in my car without my wife knowing that I was giving them a ride or getting a ride by them, which we make very, very rare intentionally. But if it happens, I just call her and say, hey, I'm going to give somebody a ride, or I could text, but usually I would call. And I think we need to take it very seriously. So my wife doesn't worry about me, and she has nothing to worry about, and I don't worry about her. But we go the extra step. And so I think it's important that we live life skillfully and together. But you're going, well, what are you going to talk about, Larry? Well, the problems that people are going to have is, what do you do when this wealth transfer happens? I'm going to do it the second week of January, because I'm personally convinced the wealth transfer is going to happen before the end of the year. And you go, well, there you go doing dates again, but I think you're hoping for it too. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not promising it. I've hired a chef, and I think that it gets hard when you have 25 people and you try to go out to a restaurant. It's just super hard. So we're going to all eat there. The meals will be prepared, and I'm not going to try to provide gluten-free and carnivore and really good quality and then really natural and vegan. We're not going to do all that. You got to come with, it's going to be great quality food, but it's not going to be everything. We will try to offer probably a healthier version and then more the good version. And I think you know what I mean. I think it's super fun when you can stay in the same building. This is an enormous house. It's like a 7,000 square foot house, super high quality. I think it will be at like $1,250 approximately for per person, $2,500 a couple. All food included. It would be 3 nights, 4 days. It'd be 2 events in a row. We're going to answer the questions about what are you going to do strategically with the wealth transfer? How are you going to move ahead? What are you going to do with your destiny? We're going to wrestle with that at a deep level. We're going to talk about how you can move ahead and and accomplish the things that are the biggest questions, in your life. I think that those are super important things. So that's what that event is probably going to look like. Here I share about how I started having some stress, and I really had to look at every area of my life, start journaling about how am I doing mentally, physically, socially, financially, spiritually. And I think it is a worthwhile thing that you should do as well. I haven't been as disciplined as I should be with watching all the different streams of money going in and out. And so we ended up buying a building, and my wife didn't want to do financing and I wanted to do financing. And so we ended up taking all the savings and stuff we had and we put it into this building. And so it wasn't the smartest way to do it. And I didn't want to do it this way, but I just did it because, and it ended up kind of coming back and biting us in the rear end, because everybody knows what it's like to feel strapped, but I've got to live for a number of years and not be feeling strapped. But now I got to feel strapped again. And so I realized I have got to know how much income and how much expense in every single business. And I want to make a form that on one page, I could either do it one page every month, but I think I'm going to be able to do it where I can get probably 6 months worth of information of how much I'm spending, how much I'm making, how much I'm spending, what my expenses are, how much I'm giving, and then even make goals for those amounts and those dates, and kind of, so that once I get this thing designed, I in less than an hour can update how I did that month, and I'll know how much liquidity I have, and I'll know what my wealth transfer allocations are. And I just think it's really a great discipline, and I've done that most of my business life. When I was going after it, I was doing that in great detail, but we've been kind of coasting for the last 4 years. And so I didn't do it. And then now I kind of got myself in a jackpot. And I'm just going to be candid. I started having stress, and I don't have a lot of stress in my life. And I thought, why am I feeling stressed out? And so is it a financial thing? Is it what? And so I started thinking about every aspect, and I've often journaled about this my whole life. I mean, how am I doing spiritually? How am I doing physically? How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing socially? And so I'll just be candid and tell you, spiritually, I'm doing really good. But sometimes I'll get paying attention to stuff that is peripheral to what I should be paying attention to. And it's not necessarily bad stuff, but like Facebook, I waste time on Facebook, and there's things that are not great on Facebook. And so I just have intentionally made the decision, I'm not going to let myself waste time on Facebook. And so, but I wasted time on Facebook. So I had to refine that. Physically, I'm like 40 pounds less than I was a year ago, but I still am not down to where I'd like to be. But I'm really happy with my physical exercise. But I think, I've been even 50 pounds down, and I really like it. I would like to lose 70 total pounds. And I haven't made it that far yet, but I cheat a little bit, and I've learned that I can cheat for a while, and I don't feel guilty about it, but I'm trying to balance that out. So physically, I've made a lot of progress, and if you look at videos a year and a half ago, you'll see, what 50 pounds more looks like on me, and I'm happy that I've lost that. But I have to eat essentially a ketovore diet to maintain that. The channel has provided socially amazing quality relationships. I feel like I'm going to Bible college. I've got all these men that I can call, and sometimes they do group calls, and we even got invited over to a couple who, we had dinner a couple months ago with somebody who came to the first boot camp, and then the people who came to the second one invited us, and they're a reasonable drive away. And so I want you to experience that as well. And intellectually, I'm reading, I'm buying, I've actually got a lot of books. I'm taking a new class. This is a class on deliverance that Jeff McCracken, Pastor Jeff McCracken's wife, Roxanne, is offering. And so that's where I went to Supernatural Ministry School. This would be kind of like maybe the 4th year of the ministry school. I'm super excited about that. How are you doing intellectually? Are you challenging yourself? Are you on a good reading schedule? How's your devotional time? My devotional times are going so well. But you know, I would have thought that if my devotions were as focused as they were, I'd hit a grand slam every day. I don't, but I'm making progress in that. So as I was thinking about what was kind of bugging me, what was bugging me is that I wasn't paying attention to my finances, and I had given people control of managing my properties, and they were allocating money in ways that I wouldn't allocate. I have 42 apartment units in a little complex, and some of you from the channel have seen it. And the property manager, not the owner, but the person who works for him, who's assigned to my contracts, has requested 6 units. I've done 3 or 4 this year, and they requested 2 more to replace the carpet. I'm not doing, you know, that's 1/7 of the units in 1 year, and they're a variety of years old, and that's just too big of a percentage. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing 3 units a year. 4 would be as most. I don't want to do 6. I just can't make the return that I should. It's poor stewardship. And so I was getting stressed out, but now that I have jumped in and I had to ask a bunch of questions, and I'm making a detailed budget, and I think I'm learning things that would help you as well, possibly. Maybe you've got all that figured out. What I've noticed is the things that make you healthy, the disciplined life to make you healthy, is very similar to the one that makes you wealthy. And spiritually, it's pretty similar as well. People who are intentional grow in the area that they care about, but hardly anybody is great at everything. A lot of people are really good at having friends, but they aren't so good with their family. And I think that God is calling people to, and I know He's calling me to, a higher commitment to family. And so I've had to adjust some of my friends. And some of the friends I was friends with 10 years ago, I'm intentionally not spending as much time with. And you might go, well, that's weird, but I think if you studied the Bible, you'd see that's biblical. Because a friend of fools, it tends to do foolish things. And a friend of wise people tends to do what wise people do. So you might have some friends that you used to think were wise, but you realize they aren't. Why are you maintaining the friendship? If they're not family, maybe it's time to replace that time with somebody else. So these are all the kinds of things I'm thinking about. The other thing I'm going to do with this video is, as you're beginning to be confronted with your destiny and God is beginning to invite you in a journey, I just think that's kind of a biblical story, whether it's Joseph or whether it's Mary in the Bible, whether it was Father Abraham. He was called to leave his family, his people, his language, and go to a country that wasn't his own. And that's kind of what God does. He calls people to move and sacrifice and engage new people and grow as a person and have impact in new places. And as God calls you to do that, I enjoyed the challenge of that. I want to plant in your mind, what are you going to do when you can do whatever you want? Because God's got blessings for you, and He's going to give you more freedom, and with increased wealth comes increased options. And so I think exploring God's beauty of His creation is a great way to do. Travel is an amazing thing. My wife and I have a cruise upcoming. I hope that you plan some things that you can do, and I hope that you run hard after God. I hope that you use your increased affluence skillfully, that you would use your increased influence skillfully. Thanks so much for watching today, and have a great day. Thank you.